Mhm. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking your time today to be with us for our first webinar of the 2019 webinar series. Today, we're going to learn about OWHE presentation tips with two of our board members, Erica and Jenna. Before they get started, I wanted to share a couple OWHE education opportunities with you. My name is Cherise Bunn. I'm the Director of Education for Oregon Women in Higher Education. And we have some great opportunities that I've worked with the education committee to create for you. So one thing is that we have this amazing webinar series, and most of the webinars are scheduled throughout the rest of 2018 or semi-scheduled, so we know it's coming up after the new director will be on board in April. But you can either propose a webinar. We have some areas where you could propose something that you're really interested in and would like to share with people, or you could just listen and share with your colleagues what you are learning. Another one is called Write for OWHE, and so that we have a blog. We have an OWHE blog, and you can either read the blog or you can write for us. There's lots of different opportunities and types of blog posts you could write. We also have something called Dear OWHE, which allows you to ask a question related to your work in higher education and share it with the OWHE board, and board members will actually respond. So it's kind of like Dear Abby, but Dear OWHE, and specific to our work in higher education. The next thing is actually the OWHE Book Club. So we've had this for about a year and a half now, and we have 12 books that we selected for 2019. There's a Facebook group and a Goodreads group, and so you're welcome to join and see what we're sharing there. Different people will share different things, but it's a great way if you like books and you're interested in reading and getting to know colleagues through that avenue. It's a great way to get involved. Next thing I wanted to share is that we have two upcoming webinars that are scheduled with dates and you can register for right now. So we have the one on February 6th, which is Advocacy 101 with me, Cherise. And so I'll be talking a little bit about advocacy and how we can incorporate that into our work and thinking about our own privilege within that. And then we have on March 1st, we have the OWHE Board of Directors elections with Brenna, Erica, Jessica, Leah, and myself. Again, there's many positions coming open, so it's your opportunity to hear about what we do and how you might be able to get involved. And then the last thing I wanted to give a plug, this is the logo for the conference that's happening on February 1st and 2nd. If you're interested in attending the conference, it should be a great opportunity to network with people and get to hear great sessions from some of your OWHE colleagues, and just have a good retreat away from the office for a while for personal growth. So with that, I'm actually gonna hand it over to Erica and Jenna.
Thank you, Cherise. All right, and I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thanks, Cherise. Okay, so welcome. So I'm Erica Curry, and with me is Jenna Durasitano, and we're going to be sharing some OWHE presentation tips today. So to get started, we wanted to build in a little space for reflection, and I'd like each of you to spend a few minutes just thinking about some of the best presentations you've ever attended. And then after that, I'm going to ask you about the worst. But right now, I really want you to focus on what's the best presentation you've ever attended. And I'm going to give you about a minute to think about that. And if you're a writer, feel free to write some notes down in a notebook. We'll have a few more reflection questions like this throughout the presentation. All right. So if you've thought about what made them so good, what were the elements that made them just amazing? And then I want you to share why in the chat. So we're going to have a couple different opportunities for people to get engaged in the chat. And so you can find a little chat icon down at the bottom of the webinar. If you're in a big group setting, maybe designate one person to be the chat person or pop the Zoom meeting open on your phone. But we'd love to have people engaging the chat. So can you share a couple of reasons why a presentation was the best presentation you'd attended in the chat? What were those things that made it so good? You can throw out one word, 2 words. Okay, so they were engaging. That's great. So some of the responses we had, I laughed and I learned. I got to know the people around me. It wasn't too long. They had interactions, so it wasn't boring. They're engaging, inspiring, and changed your view on something. When there's handouts to take away that you can share. Yes, shareables are really helpful. Okay, so now we've talked about the good, and now we're going to move on to talking about some of the worst presentations we've ever attended. And why? What made them so bad? I'd like you to think about the content and the format of the presentation and really about those elements. Talking head only. And feel free to share these in the chat. Sorry. The slides had way too many words on them. And they were read word for word. Oh my gosh, yes. At that point, just print it out and let me read it. I don't need to be in the room, right? Any other bad presentations? Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. Didn't understand the objectives. Very good. All right, I'm going to give another 20 seconds. Well, so the good news is I don't think we have to give this presentation today. It seems like everyone, title was deceiving. Sounded cool, but it made no sense. No way to connect it back to your institution. That's my least favorite thing at a conference is when I go to a session really excited and then I realize about 10 minutes in, it's too late for me to go to another session and I am just wasting my time being in this one. Yeah, that's really hard. Okay, well, great. So everyone seems to know everything and we're not going to move on. We're done. Just kidding. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to talk about universal design. And we're really going to just introduce the concept of universal design and what that means and how you can apply that to not only the work that you do, but we're really focusing on presentations and webinars. Always working really hard to make everything that we do more in alignment with universal design. We're also going to talk about some presentation development tips and some delivery tips. And then finally, we're going to leave you with a lot of resources. And we'll be sending this slide deck out, so you'll have access to all of those. One of the things that we're going to be doing that doesn't align with best practices is we're going to be throwing a lot of information at you. But again, we're going to be sending the slide deck out, and we recognize that the audience is going to range anywhere from folks who maybe haven't had much of a chance to present yet to veteran presenters. And so we wanted to make sure there was nuggets for everyone. And this is also a big topic to try to cover in 1 hour. And so we're just going to throw a lot at you really quickly. So who are we? My name is Erica Curry. I'm chair of the board. You may have seen me last year at the OWHE Unconference planning session. I identify as an extrovert, pretty far on that scale. I have an MBA, so I had to present all the time to get my degree. I probably present monthly in the course of the work that I do. And I'm one of those odd ducks. I love presenting. I love talking to people. I love being up in front of people. And I'm also a verbal processor. And so that's the angle that I come with. That's the background that I'm coming to this presentation with.
And I'm Jenna Drasatano. I'm the Director of Marketing Records and Outreach for OWHE. And I identify more as an introvert. And some people say that introverts can't give good presentations because we're too shy or other reasons. But I'm here to tell you that that is definitely not true. So if you're an introvert, please know that you can give a really awesome presentation. My background is in higher ed. So I have a master's in higher ed. And I have a lot of background in learning styles and curriculum design, so I'll be talking a little bit about that. I'm a college success instructor at Portland State, so I'm in front of students every week teaching and presenting and incorporating universal design into my instruction. And I really like to take a learner-centered approach in the classroom and engaging my learners so that they feel involved in what I'm presenting. And on the other hand, Erica is a verbal processor. I'm more of a visual processor. I like to see images. I like to look at what I'm learning about. I really respond to having slides and things in front of me.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. And I'm going to hand it back over to you. I'm going to do something really quickly so I can get the chat box back up.
Okay.
And then I'll put it back to full screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, you're welcome. Found it.
All right. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about universal design and how we can make our presentations more accessible to a variety of audiences. So as I mentioned, I teach college success at PSU, and I have a very diverse group of students. And I teach people who come from all different identities and learning styles and ability levels. And that's going to be the same wherever you're presenting. You're not going to know really who's in the room. So it's important that we make our presentations accessible to a variety of different people. I try to make my curriculum as accessible to my students. And to do that, I use universal design principles. So universal design is an approach to making facilities, information, and activities accessible to and usable by everybody. Universal design was founded on 7 main principles, which were developed in 1997 by a working group of architects, actually, and product designers and engineers, and they were led by this man named Ronald Mace, who worked at North Carolina State University. And rather than designing for the average user, universal design says that we should design for people from a broad range of characteristics, such as native language, gender, racial and ethnic background, age, ability level, learning style. And in a presentation setting or a conference setting, universal design really ensures that everyone feels welcome. It avoids segregating or stigmatizing anybody. It eliminates unnecessary complexities, and it uses different modes such as pictures, verbal, tactile, learning preferences for presenting information. So one of the best examples of universal design that I'm sure all of us have seen before, and what this cartoon you're seeing is kind of showing, is the ramp. And I like to use this example because I think it's a really easy way to think about universal design. So a ramp allows all users, to basically achieve the same goal with the same ease of use without stigmatizing ability, as you can see in this cartoon. The man that's shoveling the stairs, he's shoveling the stairs because there's a group of people waiting for the stairs. And there you can see there's one person there who is in a wheelchair and could only use the ramp to get to the building. And he's saying that he should shovel the stairs first because there's a lot of people waiting, and he'll shovel the ramp second. But what he doesn't realize is that if he shovels the ramp, then all of the people can access the building. So the ramp is kind of this idea that we can problem solve and make solutions and make things accessible to everybody, regardless of their ability level or whatever they're bringing to the table. So in the 1990s, a professor of Harvard Graduate School of Education took this idea of universal design, and he called for a change in the way we design curriculum and how we teach. He believed that when teaching others, teachers should incorporate multiple means of representation to give learners various ways of acquiring information and knowledge, multiple means of expression to provide learners alternatives for demonstrating what they know, and multiple means of engagement to tap into learners' interests and challenge them appropriately and really motivate them to learn. So Universal Design for Learning encourages this learner-centered approach to teaching and really makes us think about and consider who might be in our classroom or our conference session or in our webinar, and how we can be as equitable and accessible as possible in our presentation style. So I want you to think for a moment about how you as a learner approach a learning environment, such as a classroom or a conference session or even this webinar. What keeps your interest? How do you acquire information and learn best? How do you demonstrate what you know? Do you tend to learn better through visual processing, such as seeing the slides in front of you? Are you more of an auditory processor, such as hearing my voice, describing the concepts? Or are you more of a tactile processor, such as maybe you're writing down some of the notes or reflecting, or maybe you're typing in the chat box? So I just want you to think about how you show up as a learner in certain environments, and think about why that might be, and what your kind of learning preference is. Okay. So what does this mean for OWHE members who might be hosting a webinar in the future, or maybe you're presenting at the conference, or maybe you just have to give a lot of presentations? It really means that we need to think critically about the way that we present and the means that we use to present. We can make our presentation materials really accessible to a variety of learning preferences and abilities by using these principles of universal design. So going back to the beginning with these universal design principles, like I said, they ensure that everyone feels welcome, they avoid stigmatization, and they accommodate all learning preferences by eliminating necessary complexity in a presentation and using different modes to present to people. So some ways that we can incorporate this in our own presentations are using slide designs that are really accessible. This might look like making our font sizes larger, so people in the back of the room will be able to see, making sure that our text colors don't clash on the big screen, because things will look different on your computer screen than when they will when they're projected. So being really cognizant of that, including captions if you're showing any videos, and including alternative text if you have digital images that you're showing. Having your presentation in a variety of modalities is another way that we can incorporate universal design. So for example, we can have print copies of our slide deck available. So we'll be emailing these slides out to you all. And if you are presenting at the conference, it's really great to have printed copies of your slides for those who process better by taking notes, or maybe folks in the back of the room again who have trouble seeing the screen, they can look and follow along on a paper copy. We can also make sure our digital presentations or documents are available in accessible formats. So what that means is for folks who might use a text-to-voice translator, making sure that your documents are in PDF files, because that's one of the more accessible types of documents. Or if you are creating a slideshow or presentation, I find that Microsoft PowerPoint is a lot more accessible than Google Slides, and they have this really awesome accessibility checker that's built into the program, and you can click a button and it'll literally show you all of the ways you could make your presentation more accessible. And I've included a link to this resource at the end of the presentation. We can also be mindful of the activities we have people do during our presentations and the language we use to describe them. So for example, asking people to stand up and find a partner to work with might pose an unnecessary challenge for people with mobility differences. So we can We can also include a variety of activities that are similar that would work for a variety of audiences and to accommodate a variety of learning styles. We might start by lecturing a bit and then include some visual slides for our visual learners, then have our learners work individually, writing down for those more tactile learners, and then have them share reflections in small groups verbally for our people who process more verbally. But the important takeaway I hope you get from all of this is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to teaching and learning. We must really remember that when we're giving a presentation, universal design can help us teach and engage our entire audience in an inclusive and equitable way. So if you're interested in learning more about universal design principles and how to use it in your presentation, again, we'll be sending out a resource list with links to more information about that.
Thank you, Jenna. So our goal for this presentation was to share some tips on creating more accessible and more engaging presentations. And so Jenna really covered a lot of the accessibility and some of the really good foundational theory when you're creating presentations. And Jenna and I are not necessarily experts in presenting, but we've just presented a lot and wanted to share the tips and tricks that we've picked up over the years. So this next portion of the presentation is going to be more about designing and delivering your presentation. And it's going to be a little bit more technical. So all great presentations start with an outline. Some of us, myself included, have a tendency to procrastinate. And I understand that completely, but this is a step I recommend never skipping. I know I sound like that English teacher that says, make sure you write your rough draft before you write your final draft. And you're like, well, I can still get a B if I just do the rough draft, it's fine, or the final draft at the end. But I really recommend creating an outline. A well-outlined presentation is going to ensure that your audience understands and retains the content and that you've got your information all laid out very logically. And so when you're thinking about outlining, I've got some tips. And I've stole these tips from Gar Reynolds, the developer of Presentation Zen. And I found he's just that Presentation Zen is an invaluable resource, which I've listed at the end, when you're thinking about creating exceptional presentations. So he recommends starting every presentation brainstorm knowing what you want to accomplish, who your audience is. And so for Jen and I, as we looked at our audience, we knew we were going to have folks who maybe have never presented. We might have some really veteran presenters. So we wanted to make sure that our presentation captured what was needed for all range of that audience. Having a simple message that you want to emphasize is really important. And then having a clear, logical, physical outline before you go in and create your PowerPoint is going to really set you up for success. Keeping universal design in your audience in mind, I also want to emphasize the importance of building in time for reflection and engagement and thinking about all those things that you can help different audience members access the material and engage with the material as you are developing your outline of your presentation. So I want to, though, spend a little bit of time talking about what I mean when I say make sure that your message is simple. Why does simple matter? And so one of my mentors once told me, Erica, the most important communication tool you'll learn is the difference between want to tell and need to know. No one needs to know that you spent 30 hours crunching numbers, that you tried Python, you tried Excel. You just want to tell them that. What they need to know is that you analyzed X, Y, and Z and found blank. I still have want to tell versus need to know written on a sticky note on my laptop, and I learned that about a decade ago. Still practicing. In a second, I'm going to show you an image of Badley's model of working memory. And this is a pretty complicated image, but I just want you to take away from it that our brains rely on auditory and visual processing, and that we have a small space that stores episodes and then converts that into our long-term memory. But that space is limited. If you're dumping a lot of information into somebody's brain, you're going to overload it, and they're not going to be able to remember nearly as much. So building in space for reflection also helps create more space within that episodic memory. And when you outline, I want you to think, if I could get people to remember 3 things and only 3 things from my presentation, what would I want them to be? And I want you to have this in mind as you are designing your outline, because then you have your 3 things that you want to emphasize. and then outline that way. So if you give an elevator pitch of what if you can't give an elevator pitch of what you want folks to learn in this presentation, then you're trying to accomplish too much and you're going to overload the episodic memory and folks are going to really struggle. So that's designing your outline. Next I wanted to, or that was outlining your presentation. Now we're going to talk about designing. So all of us can picture the overcrowded, overcolored, ugly PowerPoints with sound effects and animation. And if you can't picture them, then there's some really great YouTube videos out there that are like 10 minutes long that show all sorts of things. But I wanted to give you some really practical guidelines for creating more beautiful, striking, and effective presentations that really help your audience engage with the material and follow those universal design principles. So people are both auditory and visual, as we were discussing with that model of working memory. And so I want you to be sure when you're creating a presentation that you're providing content in both ways. Have reference text, but keep it short, and then give context in presenting by speaking, and keep to the key points on the slides. And keep only the key points on the slides. I had this one coworker who swore he would never put more than 5 words on a slide because he thought that was the best practice. And I think that's a little strict and maybe slightly excessive. But remember, you can have as many slides as you want. Slides are free. And so you don't have to load tons of information on one slide. You can always just keep moving to the next and the next. And on that note, I wanted to mention, we might think that bullet points are the silver bullet, but there are quite a few studies now that show people are not a fan of too many bullet points because then you're overemphasizing things that they need to remember. So be judicious and remember to keep it simple. Researchers Laura Edelman and Kathleen Haring from Muhlenberg College have also shown that irrelevant pictures are more detrimental to learning than no pictures. So keep your pictures relevant or just don't add them if you can't find a good one. At the end of this presentation, Jen and I list some of our favorite resources for free use images. We'll also be listing some of our favorite resources for free slide themes. Having visual continuity in your presentation will really help your audience follow along. But using those old PowerPoint slide templates that we've all seen since computer lab can distract and bore your audience. So there are sites like Slide Carnival, Canva, or Slide Gala that are great alternatives for finding beautiful PowerPoint slides that follow accessibility guidelines really well. And lastly, I just wanted to mention this. I'm not going to go into data or process visualization best practices. I had like a term-long course on this, and I still don't feel like the expert. But I will say there are so many resources. So as you are visualizing data or process, make sure you take some time to look into the best practices and also make sure that you are just following these same principles for universal design because they really apply in both spaces. All right, so now we're going to move into presentation delivery tips. Most of us have taken a speech communication course in our day and have been forced to present in front of a classroom of our peers. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has harrowing memories of this. As we talked about earlier during our chat, we know not to read what's on the slide. We know to try to make eye contact, and we know not to do anything seriously distracting with our body or words. So instead, Jen and I thought we would share how we manage our presentation nerves and how we create some space. And then we wanted to create some space for the veteran presenters in this group to share their tips. And then we wanted to just open it up to questions. So my key presentation tips are as seen, but I'm an extrovert that loves to be in front of people. And I also wanted to share that even with that, I get so nervous that my hands shake. My ears start ringing. They're ringing right now. I have zero memory of my presentation when it's done. And that's about half the time. Well, it's now about a third of the time that I get in front of an audience. It used to be every single time. The only cure I found for this is being well prepared, being well rehearsed, and practicing and presenting every chance that I get. So anytime anybody says, do you want to present? I just say yes, as long as I have the bandwidth. the more I do it, the less the nerves can get to me. And at some point, I've just come to accept that I'm going to have shaky hands, and I'm not going to let that slow me down. And so for this last point, anybody who's seen me in person probably has gathered this, but I have a tendency to gesture really wildly. And I like to walk around a bit when I'm talking. And so I once gave a presentation where I got feedback, and it was really harsh feedback. That was the presenter may have been on uppers. She was moving around so much, which felt really inappropriate and really hurtful. And so I went to a mentor, and she gave me some tips to kind of help counter that. And she said, imagine being a tree. Walk up on stage, plant yourself, feel the ground beneath your feet, feel yourself shooting roots down, feel your limbs getting stronger and stiffer. You sway only in the strong winds. And so every time I got up on stage for the next few presentations, I would just tell myself that I am a tree, I am a tree. And it worked. I tried it, and it really worked for me, that visual. But everyone's different, and everyone's going to have different things that they're trying to overcome when they're managing their nerves. And so maybe it's not a tree for you. Maybe it's imagine being a river, or I don't know. But find that visual that works for you, that grounds you when you get on stage, and really hold on to that. So be a tree or something. And I wanted to hand it over to Jenna to share some really great advice that she once got.
Yes. So the best piece of advice that I have ever received regarding presentations actually happened during my first year working in higher ed, at my very first conference presentation. And this advice has really stuck with me since then. And I think about it every time I'm going to go into a presentation, or even when I teach. And so the first time that I ever presented, I was working as an AmeriCorps member actually at Oregon State University. And I was asked to present at this regional conference, just kind of talking about the work that I was doing. It was involving mentoring programs, and I agreed, and then I realized what I had signed up for, and I got absolutely terrified. And I'm one of those perfectionist type people that spends hours like making sure everything looks perfect on their presentation. And I was doing that, and I was getting more nervous as the presentation date was coming up. And the conference was in Seattle, actually. The day of the conference, I took the train up early in the morning to Seattle, and I was going through the slides again on the train, and I found a colleague on the train who was also going up to attend the conference, and she was much older than me and had many more years of experience. And I told her, I'm feeling really nervous about this. I've never presented before. Everyone in the room is going to have more experience than me. Do you have any tips? And what she told me has stuck with me ever since then. And she said that nobody in that room is going to know more about your topic or your personal experience than you. And this isn't like a high school presentation where you're going to be graded. Everybody in that room wants to learn from you, and they're going to be there with an eager mind, and they're really cheering you on. So just remember that, and remember that you are just sharing what you know and sharing your experience, and everybody there wants to be there and wants to learn from you. So keeping that in mind when I'm preparing for a presentation, and remembering that I'm not being graded on this, I'm doing this because I want to share my experience. That's always really helped me. So just relax, and remember that you are the expert of your topic and your experience.
All right, thank you. So now we wanted to open up to our more veteran presenters, or anyone else who wants to share your presentation tips. What helps you? What are some of the best things that you've learned around presentations? And go ahead and put it in the chat. Sorry, forgot that part. Oh, I love these. Okay, so enthusiasm at the topic goes a long way. Have fun, practice, and discuss the more difficult ones with your mentors. drink coffee the morning of of presenting. I have to do the opposite. I need 1 cup, but I cannot have too much coffee or I am just a jittery ball of nerves. Remember to breathe. Yeah, just breathe. It doesn't help if you aren't breathing and pass out. That's a good point, and it sounds like maybe it came from learned experience. But no, that's a really good point. Yeah, 1-hour presentations are really hard because you've got introductions, you're trying to create community, and that can take up to 15 minutes. And I think that's where that keeping it simple piece is so important. Really, what I've tried to start doing is keep what I'm trying to tell really simple and then just link out to a lot of other information in my presentation, because I find that that gives me more time to spend on the 1 or 2 key things I want people to leave with, giving them space to really chew on that. Have water or something you're available so you can sip if your mouth gets dry from talking. Great point. I've got my water bottle in front of me. Present with a partner. I love that. You can learn more and provide better content to folks. Someone once told you to make a joke, even if it's a joke at your own expense, and acknowledge your nerves. Yeah, there's something really freeing in being very authentic. And so if you handle being nervous by making nervous jokes, then that's a great method. And it also, I am a firm believer that if you can bring it out into the open, it loses its power. And so if you can bring being nervous out into the open, I feel like it loses its power. And of course, you really want to be thoughtful in the way that you do that, but agreed. An hour and 15 minutes for a presentation. Yeah, I've definitely been to some that were that length. Okay, did I miss any? Present first thing in the morning. Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Charisse. Okay, so thank you. And feel free to keep adding presentation tips to the discussion. But now we really wanted to open it up. We were half an hour early. So whomever said keeping the presentation short, you're welcome. But does anybody have questions? Because we really like to open it up to questions. And I see one about the schedule for the OWHE conference. And that is, we've got co-chairs for the board or for the conference on the board of directors. And they are, and you're more than welcome to email me and we can chat about it, or you can email me and include them and we can all chat together about how we come up with the schedule. And then, and any ideas you have for suggestion or any ideas or suggestions you have. And you are also more than welcome to run for the board. Those, as Charisse mentioned, we're gonna have a webinar on that in March. So if you have ideas or suggestions or ways that you wanna get involved at OWHE, I highly recommend running for the board. Or you can just email me a question if you want less commitment. Any other questions about presentations? Yes, feedback on the conference. Yes, we'll be sending out a survey right after the conference as well. And we use that feedback back during our retreat planning. If you go to, oh, thank you, Juliana. What are some ways to manage nerves before presenting? Jenna, do you want to start?
Sure. For me, and look, it's gonna look different for every person. But what I like to do, and it really works well for me, is to just spend the night before and then a few minutes before I'm going to present, closing my eyes and just visualizing myself giving the presentation and doing it really well, and visualizing everybody really loving what I'm talking about and engaging, to close your eyes and to think about those things and to really think about yourself presenting and going through the presentation in your mind and thinking about what you hope to see and what you hope the engagement will look like, that really puts me in a positive mindset. And when I go into the actual presentation, I feel like I've already kind of done it once, and that tends to ease my nerves a little bit. There's a lot of really great guided visualization meditations that are available like on YouTube, or even through like iTunes and things like that. So looking into those, and maybe listening to a 5-minute guided meditation before going into presentation, that just kind of really eases my nerves.
I would say for me, I spend a lot of time, so I compartmentalize, and I say you get 1 hour the night before to rehearse, and then that's it. And after that, you've just got to let it go until tomorrow, because you can't do anything else. And then, so I give myself that hour, and then I just shift gears. And every time the thought about the presentation comes up, I have a mental bucket, and I just put it back in that bucket where it belongs. And then the day of the presentation, I never ever go to a session right before I'm presenting, because that's too much. That just induces too much anxiety. And so I give myself time to like see the space, time to set up and prepare. And I spend a lot of time just making sure every single detail that I need covered is covered. But I practice a ton. And then, and I tell myself just over and over for weeks leading up, you're going to kick ass on this. So you're going to kick butt on this. And I just say it over and over and over again. And until I really, really believe it. And then the day of, I also will text a couple people and just say, I'm getting ready to present. And I get good luck texts. And that also makes me feel a lot better. Any other questions? You can email me at chair@owhe.org. And Jenna, yours is marketing@owhe.org.
Sorry, it was muted there. outreach@owhe.org.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Charisse.
All right. I think that seems like that's all the questions for now. I wanted to thank both of you so much for sharing your knowledge with us and making this awesome presentation. And I'll let you share your resources.
Thanks, Charisse. No, it's okay. So these are some of the resources we put together. You can learn more about the things that we relied on to inform our presentation on the first set of slides. And then these are where we find our slide templates at. Also free stock images, some places that we pull images from. Pexels has lots of really beautiful images. Upsplash is really good at, and also has more diverse images than Pexel does. Canva can have some really great resources. If you haven't used Canva before, anytime you're trying to create anything visual, I highly recommend checking out Canva. Microsoft Office has a built-in accessibility checker. And then Slide Gala and Slides Carnival are my two places that I like to pull templates from, and there's some redundancy between the two. But I really like finding my slide decks there. And then 24slides.com. I haven't really used it, but I was looking at it as I was trying to find a template for this presentation, and it looks like they've got more visualization templates. So it's like individual slides that include like different types of graphics. So if you're trying to present a business case or data or a workflow process, 24 slides might be a good place to check out. And then you can always use Canva to create a PowerPoint. Thank you everyone so much for attending. This was wonderful. And thank you so much for your engagement. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you all at the conference. Have a wonderful day. I'll hand it over to Sri.